Welcome to the Infowars Nightly News. I'm your host, Jakari Jackson. Here's what we have in store for you on this August 21st, 2013 edition.
Tonight on the Infowars Nightly News, whistleblower Bradley Manning sentenced to 35 years for unleashing the transparency we were all promised. Plus, a Japanese brainwashing campaign boldly declares that radiation doesn't affect you when you are smiling. Then, Sergeant Joe Biggs on the militarization of the police in America. All that and more on the Infowars Nightly News.
And welcome back. Top story headline: sentenced to 35 years. Bradley Manning faces longest ever prison term for leak. Manning was convicted last month of 19 charges related to his document disclosures, including 12 Espionage Act and theft charges, as well as others including wrongfully storing classified information and misusing computer equipment. Manning may be able to seek parole after serving a third of his sentence and has already spent 3 years in jail. WikiLeaks pointed out that he may be eligible for release in less than 9 years. Even so, Manning's sentence is far longer than any other in Espionage Act history in terms of the U.S. So Private First Class Bradley Manning, who I think is an American hero, he releases these documents, this information, and it's all about Manning. It's all about what he did and, the information he released. It's not about any repercussions for anybody else who was actually doing these things, for the soldiers who were shooting at children from helicopters and so on and so forth. Many other things have been released in those documents, but no, it's all about him, just like it's all about Edward Snowden and what he did. It's not about the people who are actually doing these things behind the scenes. And as far as I'm concerned, 3 years is more than enough for Mr. Manning, and I do wish him a very speedy release. I mean speedy as in tomorrow, or if not today. But it's one thing to be sentenced to pretty much life in prison, 35 years, especially as a young man. He's going to be eating all the GMO crappy food and being beat up in prison and so forth. But that's one thing, but it's also another thing to have your car just blow up when you're driving down the street and then have a coroner's report come out and say you have meth, you have this, you have that in your bloodstream, exaggerated reports about your drug habits and so forth. Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs was on the Alex Jones radio show to discuss this very issue.
Staff Sergeant Biggs, thanks for popping in with us. There's a lot of facets to this that smell. What's your take on it?
Yeah, just a lot of these things that keep showing up in the toxicology report. I mean, if it had no effect on the accident, why are they naming? They're just like running off and naming all this different stuff, but then they go and say, well, there's nothing wrong. They're saying that he was on mushrooms apparently, because that's what DMT is. It's like a psilocybin. There's just all kinds of random stuff. And the methamphetamine, I mean, he was known to be on Ritalin, so I don't know if that's a contributing factor to something that showed positive in the test.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. They've put hundreds of millions of people worldwide on these drugs, and now, oh, that's right, he was a Ritalin from childhood, and then the people get basically used to it to operate, and then now that's like an excuse for why his car blew up. It's just very strange.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking over the police report right now, and it's saying that, because of, striking the tree, and it was instantaneous death. I mean, if you look at the tree, you can tell this doesn't add up.
Well, what about them saying that he was charred beyond recognition, so they had to cremate him, but now the autopsy says they got fingerprints and that wasn't true?
Yeah, I know. It's just crazy.
Well, I mean, stories are always going to change and things, but, I mean, the fact is, if I ever say, I'm going off the radar, they're coming after me, boom, I mean, obviously something smells here. And the fact that they ridicule anybody that questions, I think that's a big red flag right there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that are questioning everybody who's questioning the whole incident itself. A lot of the people I know that have the same viewpoints as I do about what happened, they're all being ridiculed. And, everyone just wants to throw that conspiracy tag on there when there's just so many questions that aren't answered and so many things don't add up. I mean, you've got to be mental to not think that there's something more than just an accident.
Now stay tuned, because after this news segment, Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs is going to be our guest on the Infowars Nightly News, talking about the militarization of America. But let's move on. NSA has ability to illegally spy on 75% of all internet traffic. I'm surprised it's such a small amount, 75%, writes Mike Masnick for Tech Dirt, replete with NSA doublespeak. It claims that it is not accessing all this traffic because it asks the telcos, that's the telecom companies, to do some of the filtering for it. That's how it gets away with talking about things we actually touch, even though it deals with the telcos basically mean they can access almost everything. The Wall Street Journal reports that the government considers its vast array of surveillance programs as legal under a broad interpretation of the FISA Amendment Act, an act obviously at odds with the Fourth Amendment. So they're playing these word games. No, we don't spy on you. We hire the person who actually spies on you. That's like if you hire some peeping Tom to go spy in somebody's window with a video camera when the guy gets caught. Well, I was working for them, and then the big boss says, well, I didn't technically do it. I hired this guy to go do it. So that's what the telecom companies and the NSA are involved with. And like I said, it's a 75% number, which to me is a small number. I thought they could spy on all internet traffic, and I wouldn't be surprised to find out if that was actually the case. Now, dubious chemical weapon attack in Syria coincides with UN visit, which to me, you can see the video and the images right there. If you were going to have chemical weapons or any type of weapons, let's say you're an ex-con here in the United States, and you know you're not supposed to have guns in your house, and you know the cops are coming by for their visit or their checkup or whatever, and you have a big gun rack in your house with loaded weapons. And not only do you have the loaded weapons, the officer walks inside and you start shooting off your guns inside your house knowing that you're an ex-con. That's pretty much the situation they're trying to blame on the Assad regime in Syria. And once again, I'm not cheerleading for Assad. You know, the Syrian rebels aren't much better in my opinion, but I'm not cheerleading for Assad. But this is the situation we see in Syria. You know, Obama wants this red line, this step over the line so he can go in and put visible troops, visible boots on the ground to go in and control Syria. So he's saying, no, if they have these chemical weapons, if they have these chemical agents, we're going to bust in there. And I think that's what the situation is that we're seeing right here. Just another frame up, just like we saw months ago when they had the chemical attack and both sides are pointing at each other like this. We didn't do it, that guy did it, and we see another one right here. And I don't put anything past the Syrian rebels. You know, they have kids playing with dynamite, they're ripping out people's hearts and so forth. So another dirty trick, in my opinion, from the Syrian rebels. Now we have this brainwashing campaign. Radiation doesn't affect people who are smiling. If you are smiling, you will not have any radiation effect. This is what they're trying to convince you of. If you are not smiling, you will have radiation effect. And they prove this theory by testing it on animals. And the guy asks, what's the difference between safe and feeling safe? And he says, safe can be recognized by anyone. Feeling or recognition of safe, meaning of the feeling of safe, is really narrow, but safe is safe for everyone. And if you're like me, you're like, how does that possibly make sense, even if you did test it on somebody's dog, which I think is pretty horrific, and Peter needs to go over there and yell at some people. But if you feel safe, you are safe. So this next article has nothing to do with anything. West coast of North America to be hit hard by Fukushima radiation. So if you feel safe, then you have nothing to worry about because you are safe. And the fact that, you know, these diagrams and these graphs, they just don't mean anything. Yeah, you can see it right there on your screen, and we'll scroll down and show you some more of these graphs. You know, you can see the patterns there of the radiation moving in towards various areas. But if you feel safe, you are safe. And we have proven this by testing this theory on animals. San Diego Craigslist ads searches for surveillance role players. And, you know, these are the crisis actors and so forth that you hear so much about. San Diego Craigslist ads searches for surveillance role players. Qualified personnel should demonstrate an established track record of conducting surveillance operations at various discretion levels, supporting surveillance training and military practice exercise training. Individuals with previous military, intelligence, community, and law enforcement experience are highly preferred. And you can see the article as it is itself right there on your screen. According to the company's website, their mission is to effectively address and solve our clients' emerging and most complex leadership, organizational, and operational challenges. And this is from the Massey Group. Now, we're just going to show you just a few of the examples here of the agencies that have used these resources of the Massey Group. We have the Army National Guard, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Department of Defense. And keep in mind, it wasn't all that long ago. This isn't the drill itself, but San Diego had a drill similar to this where they had a zombie invasion. This is real news. You can go look it up. This happened, I believe it was last year. They had a mock zombie invasion full of, like what you see right there, crisis actors. Now, I do again stress this isn't the drill itself, but it was somewhat similar. A zombie attack happened, a zombie invasion, and they have to go rush in and save the vice president or whatever the thing was. And these are the crisis actors you hear about. Now, I'm not saying that every time you see somebody crying on TV during a tornado or during a school shooting or whatever, I'm not saying that every single one of those people are crisis actors. Don't take that out of context. I'm just saying that crisis actors do exist, and this is a perfect example of that. So let's end now with our quote of the day. This is from Jim Morrison. We fear violence less than our own feelings. Personal, private, solitary pain is more terrifying than what anyone else can inflict. That by Mr. Jim Morrison. So stay tuned, because as I alluded to earlier, right after this break, we'll have Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs right here in the studio, and he's going to be talking to Leanne McAdoo about the militarization of America.
Now you can watch Alex Jones live at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
You can also browse the network, the Infowars Nightly News,
and over 60 movies and documentaries all together in one place.
You can watch the Alex Jones radio show live as it happened.
So check it out, Infowars.com/show.
Many anthropologists and archaeologists believe that before man even discovered the power to harness and use fire, we were involved in agrarian activities. That is, taking the seeds of plants and then replanting them to produce more. The very foundation of our modern civilization and human culture is centered around the planting and cultivation of edible plants.
Here are some of the amazing deals at Infowars Seed Center at InfowarsShop.com.
The Survival Seed Vault by My Patriot Supply features only the finest survival heirloom seeds for a robust and hardy garden, even in the toughest times. We also have starter varieties of the deluxe seed packages for fruit, salads, salsa, peppers, medical herbs, and more.
Go to the Infowars Seed Center at InfowarsShop.com.
And remember, the revolution against tyranny is growing.
We've learned a lot from Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs about the Michael Hastings crash and then the fallout from that event. But we wanted to get him in the studio today to talk about the rising police state in America. Thanks for being here with us. Okay, so Alex brought you in the studio because he wanted to talk with you about the Michael Hastings crash and the cover-up. But we really wanted to get your take as an ex-military. Where do you think America is headed? What do you see with the militarization of our police? And
it's definitely become a more of a brutal force. You know, they're definitely taking on a little bit more of our tactics. I can see that in a lot of the videos I see. They're getting a little bit more high-tech gear. You know, they're able to withhold information like we do, you know, like we're able to do in the military as well, and they're able to keep a lot of this stuff away from the people, and that's a big sign that we're kind of starting to slip away from where America was supposed to head, and it's just going to this whole other direction of control, and just, you know, we're only allowed to hear what they want us to hear at this point.
yeah, exactly. It's supposed to be separation of powers, but they're getting their intel now from the NSA, and everyone's sharing everything. I guess they just had a report out. There was $200 million worth of ex-military grade equipment being given to local law enforcement. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a bit uncalled for. I don't think they need that kind of stuff. I mean, if we're, I mean, what do we need that for? I mean,
Exactly.
we've never needed it before. I don't think we need it anytime soon right now.
Yeah, I definitely do not want to see our sheriff
In a tank.
Our Ace Vito, yeah, riding a tank through town.
Apache helicopters with Hellfire missiles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really bizarre. So what is your position on the Second Amendment? They're obviously working that angle right now in Obama's administration to get that stripped from us. What do you think?
Everyone has the right to bear arms. I mean, that's what we were founded on. I mean, we have the right. I mean, the right to bear arms isn't just to protect ourselves. It's to protect our way of freedoms in our life against the government if they try to oppress us. That's the point of it. I mean, so for them to try to take that away, it's another way that they're just trying to control us and keep us from being able to rise up and fight for what this country was founded on. And it scares them because they know a lot of people are starting to wake up. They're starting to see what really is going on behind the curtain. It almost reminds me of, you know, the Wizard of Oz. You know, you got the guy back here. You know, it's a scary thing to see happen.
What was your take on that? There was a CNN article that came out that said that should we allow ex-military to be able to bear arms once they get back into the United States, once they're out?
Yeah, I heard about that, and to them, they can go ahead and try and come and take that if they'd like to. I do believe that everyone should have some kind of mental evaluation every so often, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, if someone's a loon, I definitely don't want them in the, you know, to have weapons or anything like that. That's definitely not a good thing. But, you know, like I was saying to Alex yesterday, I went through a lot of the same experiences that some of my buddies went through. Or they're on the same day, the same mission, and they're completely out of their minds now. You know, they're on all kinds of drugs. They're in a psychiatrist's office almost every day, being evaluated, and I saw the exact same things as them, and I'm not affected by it.
Right.
You know, I'm able to go to school, I'm able to do my things, and I don't have nightmares. I don't have, you know, these thoughts of harming people or anything like that. You know, when I see a gun, it's something I'm comfortable with from being in the military, and I enjoy to go out and shoot some rounds. It's a way to relieve stress, and, you know, I don't see there's anything wrong with that.
Well, right, they put you through all sorts of mental evaluations on your way in. So I thought it was kind of curious that CNN also said that post-traumatic stress disorder is actually a mental illness going in. It's not actually what happens in war. What do you think about that?
I mean, there's people out there who can fake their ways through testing. I mean, there's some smart people out there that control their stuff. I mean, because obviously they got in. I mean, I had some soldiers that were loons, and, you know, I wouldn't trust them with a gun out here on the street sometimes, but overseas they were perfect for that job. There's no way to scan, you know, for mental illness from everyone. I mean, you can always look back at people's childhood. That's always a good thing. You know, how did they grow up? What kind of, you know, family were they raised in? The environment they had. I mean, that's definitely a way that they're going to think about stuff when problems arise as an adult. I mean, that's one way you could do it, but at the end of the day, PTSD is kind of an overrated term that gets used. I don't really like to use it that much. Out of all the people I've met in the military, maybe 3 people actually have it that I believe and without a shadow of a doubt know that this guy is messed up from what he's done, from what he's seen, and he just can't come back from it. Other than that, a lot of people use it as a way to get out of things. They try to use it as a way to, well, you know, I got in trouble with the cops. It's because I had PTSD. You know, I was in Afghanistan or I was in Iraq, and you know, that's an excuse. You know, people use it for an excuse all the time.
Well, do you think you have a little bit of an edge because you have a military family background? So you sort of saw how they dealt with the stress.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, my father was a Vietnam vet in the Marine Corps, and I mean, that guy is just a nut job at times. And, you know, I always watched him go through. First time I ever saw my father cry, I remember it was Forrest Gump came out, and I was at the theater, and the Vietnam scene happened, and they were at the memorial and all this. And he broke down and cried, and I didn't understand it. You know, and my dad said, maybe one day I'll tell you. And anytime he saw military things like that, he would just break down. It got to a point where he just couldn't hold it anymore. And I always told myself, if I ever did join the military, I never wanted to be like that. I didn't want to let things that I did eat me away because I made a decision to go do that. So I have to be able to justify that and live with it. You know, holding it in and then blowing up, and it's just not an excuse for that. You did it, you need to come to terms with it and just move on. And talking about it's the easiest way.
That's just shocking, though. I don't know, if I was an 18-year-old kid, and maybe I guess a lot of guys play video games, so they're acclimated to violence, but it seems like it would be so difficult to erase certain things. You were talking about a story on Alex Jones' radio show about the guy, the suicide bomber, and I just don't know how I could ever shake that out of my
I mean, I grew up, I went from, you know, an 18-year-old boy to an 18-year-old man my first day in Iraq. You know, I knew at some point in time it would come to where I'd have to pull that trigger, but I never knew that the first time I killed somebody would be the first day in country on a convoy. And the guy that I was with, you do what's called a left seat, right seat ride. These guys are outgoing, they're leaving the country, and they're there to kind of show us the ropes of the mission that we're going to be taking over that they were doing. And this guy looks at me and he's like, hey, I'm like a week away from going home. I've got a wife and 2 kids. He's like, you listen to what I say. If I tell you to speed up, you speed up. If I tell you to slow down, you slow down. If you don't, I will punch you in the face. He's like, we're getting ready to drive through this town called Ashraf, and he's like, it's known that they'll send people in front of you to stop, and then they ambush you with RPGs from the top and try to, you know, kill you. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh, that's easy, you know, whatever, I just won't stop. I drive through. And lo and behold, we finally get there, and the guy calls up to the rest of the people in the convoy and saying, hey, we're, you know, approaching Ashraf. And I'm like, my heart starts pounding. I'm like, man, I hope I don't have to do anything. I don't know if I'm ready for this yet. And we start going through the downtown area, and this guy like walks out in front of me and just stops. And I go to hit the brakes, and next thing you know, I just get a hook from the side. He punches me, and I push down on the gas, and I just remember and hitting this guy, and I'm just like, oh my God, I mean, I've only been here a day, and I just had to do this, like, you know, it just ate me up. And for like, you know, 3 or 4 days, I didn't talk to anybody. I was just kind of like, I was pissed off at that guy. I was like, you made me do that. And after just sitting around and thinking about it, you know, I had to, you know, be like, you know, if I didn't, you know, if I did stop, then, you know, we'd be writing all these letters to these people's families saying that, you know, they're all dead because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So I learned to just kind of deal with it, and that's what you have to do in the military, is learn to deal with it and rationalize it any way you can. As sick and messed up as some of the things you have to do are, you just got to learn to bite the bullet, suck it up, and move on. I would look at my soldiers and I would be like, you know, you got to understand there's a reason they're pissed off at us. Who wouldn't be? We're here. We're doing God knows what reasons we are here, but we are here. And I was like, I don't blame anyone for wanting to be mad and, you know, hate me for that reason. I mean, but I would tell them, just focus on what you got to do. The more you think about all this stuff, the more it's going to make you not be able to think clearly. If you do need to react to save yourself, the best thing to do is just kind of push it aside and then think about it later, and another time write it down and make notes. And, you know, you can bring up topics at certain times, but, you know, I would be mad too if, you know, people were rolling through in Humvees and telling me I couldn't, or I had to go to bed at a certain time, or I couldn't do that. Who wouldn't be? I mean, if people were to come here and do that, I'm going to be pissed off. I'm going to go down to my basement. I'm going to grab my guns, and, you know, it's on.
Well, that's what I'm curious what you think about the Russian troops that have been rolling in to America. Do you think that they're going to possibly enforce those same type of things on Americans that we were doing to Iraqi and Afghanistan?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, anything's possible. I mean,
would they have you all do it?
They could try. I've even brought this up to command. I mean, just because when you're overseas, you talk about some of the most random conversations, anything to pass the time, anything to break up just the boringness when you're not on a mission, you know. And I was like, you know, if we ever go to a, you know, martial law and a police, you know, the government takes over and the military is running the streets, I'm not going to be picking up a gun, and I'm not going to be threatening my family because, you know, you guys told me to do this. It's not going to happen. And I had a lot of my guys that said the same thing. I mean, there's no way you're going to bring me back to my home and then tell me I need to fight my people. I don't think so. All the guys that I knew, that I was with, there's no way in hell that they're going to do that. But you're always going to get that one guy who's he just wants to keep that role of that power to be able to. And you'll get a lot of those guys that would love to have that power over some people back here in the, you know, in the States. You know, it's power's a driving power, you know.
Hell of a drug.
It's a hard thing to give up, and that's one of the things I miss about the military was just leading my men and having that, you know, that almost fathership role, that leadership role. And it's a hard thing to give up. And I mean, it's understandable, but you know, it's not going to happen here. Not by me, not by any of my guys.
Mm-hmm. What did you think about Eric Holder's response to Rand Paul's filibuster regarding the drone use in America?
You know, that's not something you want to be on the receiving end of, because I've seen them in action, and they are a deadly instrument, and they're very precise.
Well, precise, but they kill innocent people within the...
Well, you're always going to have, you know,
casualties.
The day that suicide bomber went off, the Taliban released saying that they killed everyone in the base and that we were all dead. You know, and my mom thinks I'm dead because of that, you know, at that time, because that's what they came out and said. So I'm sure Pakistan, of course, they're going to say it's all innocent people. That's just how it goes. You know, when they don't want to take responsibility for harboring people or Taliban, then the easiest, you know, way for them to get out of that is to say it's innocent people every time. And apparently everybody we kill, you know, is innocent all the time. I mean, there are bad guys. I've seen them. I've been on the missions. I've seen the things that they were planning to do. So it's not some, you know, puppet show where, you know, these are the bad guys and, you know, they're fake and they're not really there. And we're just saying that it's, you know, it's there. I mean, these guys are there and they're doing stuff. So the drones need to be on them, not on us.
Exactly, not on Americans.
Yeah.
Well, Staff Sergeant, thank you so much for being in the studio here in Texas with us today. We're going to have you back real soon.
Right on, thank you.
All right, well, if you want to learn more about this covert operation against the American people, visit the Infowars store and pick up a copy of American Drug War 2. The Infowars store is the exclusive dealer for the next few months. Get your hookup today. That's it for the news tonight. Join us here weekdays at 7 p.m. Central. Now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
More than 60 movies and documentaries all in one place at Infowars.com/show.